Yeah.
Because even, Nate Stanley sitting at 6'5", 240, 250, whatever the hell he is, he's not going to win that battle with a Big Ten linebacker.
Right.
Never. That's 7 days a week thing. So, yeah, I would have liked to see him go low and try to bull rush his way in there. But love the play call.
Honestly, it kind of looked like he could have gotten concussed at the end of that. That was one hell of a pop by that Wisconsin linebacker, too.
Well, I mean, you look at the replay, he came in standing up. It's like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, no shit.
No, I agree with you guys. But looking at the final score, so that sealed it after actually a little bit of a comeback by Iowa. We were actually down 21 to 6 at one point at the end of the third quarter. So came back to make it respectable. There was a 75-yard catch by Tyrone Tracy, and I want to get into the stats of this game, guys. Nate Stanley, 17 for 28 for 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Torrin Young ran the ball 9 times. He was our leading back with 44 yards, and his longest was 12 yards. Tyler Goodson actually had a really nice run for 21 yards, but he only finished with 26 on the game. The Hawkeye offense as a total running the ball only ran it for 87 yards. It just shows how great of a Wisconsin has on defense this year.
Right. And, Rob, there are countless stats out there that show when the Hawkeyes failed to run for or fail to get over that 100 rushing yards mark, there's a good chance they don't win the ball game.
No, I agree. And this is just another one of those games that's an example of that. However, our passing game, we definitely stepped it up in the second half. We saw that. Tyrone Tracy led all receivers for 5 receptions, 130 yards, and a touchdown. That was mostly off of that 75-yard long touchdown that he had. But other than that, we got Nico Organi for 6 receptions for 32 yards. Amir Smith-Marset, 3 receptions for 27 yards. Hawkeyes threw it for 208. On the other side of the ball, I mean, Jonathan Taylor ran for 250 after 31 carries. Jack Cohn threw the ball 16. He was 16 for 25, 173 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. But really, guys, I think and let's talk about their receivers, because obviously Quintez Cephas really made a name for himself at this game. 5 receptions, 94 yards, and a touchdown. And a few of those, he just was able to catch it over our guys.
Yep.
And he looked like a beast. But then you got their tight end, Jake Ferguson, 2 for 19. Danny Davis III, 4 for 19 as well. So really kind of a balanced attack as far as the Wisconsin game goes. I mean, they were able to throw it when they needed to, and they were able to see success from that. But more than that, guys, I mean, in order to beat Wisconsin, this is something that Iowa did not do well at all. But we didn't stop the run, and we didn't make Jack Cohn beat us.
Nope.
And so I kind of want to see what, anything final thoughts on this game, I guess, guys.
My final thoughts are pretty simple. I think Jack Cohn and the Wisconsin Badgers out Iowa to Iowa.
I like that. And, to your point, Rob, I think the defense has to come into this next week looking at that game film and saying, all right, let's burn it. We're not ever going to look at it again. We need to form tackle. We know how to step up. We got to step up, and we got to hold Minnesota's offense too. Slim to none.
Yeah. And second final thought there.
Yep.
The main goal for the season obviously is over, kind of like you touched on earlier.
Yep.
Then again, there's still a ton to play for. There's been seasons where we haven't won the Big Ten, but you get to 10 wins. And, obviously, you didn't hit that goal of winning that Big Ten championship, but that puts, not necessarily some unwanted expectations, but, gives the guys a little bit of a step, especially all those guys returning, the Tyrone Tracys, the Brandon Smiths, the Amir Smith-Marsets.
Yep.
Pretty much that entire defense outside of possibly A.J. Epinesa.
I like hearing that too.
Yeah. No, I was just saying. So, I think still finishing this season, they still got a lot to play for, and really just kind of getting rallied up for next year.
And I think a lot of them still have that mindset too. Is I think we all watched the Tuesday interviews, and all the players are like, "Hey, we're hoping 10-win season still on the plate, and we can do that." So that's the next best thing. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Well, coming out of this game, guys, we wanted to jump into the mailbag, and we did have a couple of questions that we can jump into. With Dylan has lined up for. So. First question is from Adam in North Liberty, Iowa. And his question is for the Hawkeyes and Tallboys: where does this offense rank in the last decade of Iowa football? And I guess, Dylan, I can send this to you.
Yeah, so just awesome question, Adam. This is one I really enjoyed doing a little bit of research on, because I hadn't had a question like this before. And so looking into the research, so as you would probably expect, in the last 10 years, as far as points per game goes, this year is one of our worst years offensively. But you look at the other 2 years, and the other one makes sense. So you look at the 2012 year where the Hawkeyes went 4-8, obviously a down year. And that year, so they were average 19.33 points per game compared to this year. So far, we're averaging 24.1. So obviously a big drop off there. Makes sense why that team only came away with 4 wins, right?
Yeah.
The thing that really shocked me, though, is so this year, as far as the last decade goes, is we're the third worst offensively in regards to points per game. The second worst team in regards to points per game was actually the 2009 Iowa Hawkeyes.
That surprises
And
me.
that team went to that year. It was a BCS Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and won.
Wow.
Beat Georgia Tech. And so it was just really interesting to see that because that year they averaged 23 points per game. So 23.15 to be exact.
But they had that defense.
That defense. You got to remember that defense was outstanding. That they had Tyler Sash, Brett Greenwood, Micah Hyde. Looking at linebackers, God, I can't even think right off the top of my head. But then Adrian Claiborne, Broderick Benz.
Yep.
Just oodles of NFL talent.
Hey,
on that team.
Chad Greenway would have been on that team, right? Or was that
No, that he was on the first Orange Bowl team.
okay?
Now, just a question because we have the stats. Who was the highest scoring Iowa football team in the last decade?
Oh, good question. Let me look here. 31. I think 31 is the highest.
I'm thinking like 2015,
So it's actually,
2016 Hawks.
and that just goes to show you what a weird year this year was, but it's the 2018 Iowa Hawkeyes.
Really?
Last
year
year's
were the
team.
highest scoring.
Do you
Highest
think?
scoring.
Do you think it was skewed though with that 55-24 victory over Ohio State?
Well, it might be if we were talking about the 2017 Iowa Hawkeyes. Bo, you rascal.
Well, we 50 pointed in Minnesota too. I think we put up 52 or 55
Was that
on.
last year? That might have been.
Or no, I think it was 41-20. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But
God, dang.
that's okay. It's okay, Bo. We're not here to remember stats, but no, nonetheless, Adam, I think that was an awesome question.
Interesting question.
And
to
with the
dive
way
into
college football is working,
yeah,
it's kind of like the NFL where I think it's slowly trailing behind the NFL, but it's becoming that offensive game.
Mhm.
No, obviously defense is still important, but we got to get points up on the board if we're going to come away with these wins.
absolutely, guys.
Sounds obvious.
Well, I really think that we need to adapt to that. And speaking of kind of looking at our roster and what we can provide as far as that goes, obviously our biggest crutch right now, our weakness is going to be our offensive line. And this next question kind of leads me right to it. So Seth, coming straight out of
North Liberty, Iowa as well.
North Liberty, Iowa. Thanks for the question. Why is Paulson still on a scholarship? And I like that he didn't specify
Which one?
which one.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's just call a spade here, guys. Obviously, Landon came out and started, this past game versus Wisconsin, as we weren't sure if him or Shooter were going to get the nod. Again, there was a play where you watch the replay and you see him in, not Kallenberger, but him and Tyler Linderbaum pretty much playing patty cake as a Wisconsin defensive lineman runs right around him to stack Nate Stanley. And it's just,
first possession too.
yeah, it's just, you just look at that and you're like, what? And I just cough. I can't even get the words out. What in the heck is going on there? So obviously some issues that they got to get worked out on the offensive end, but hey, let's just call it what it is. And he won't be here next year. And, someone's going to have to step up and fill his shoes.
And I'm not here to call anybody out, but to be honest, though, what a
I am.
What a disappointment. Both
I think
both
so too.
brothers, 6'5", 305 pounds, state champion wrestlers.
Yep.
And they've been in the program for 5 years, and now they come out and they get their chance to start, and they just kind of piss it down their leg, to be honest with you. So honestly, my thought is what a disappointment. I couldn't agree more with Seth.
Yeah. And good overall team guys. And obviously,
Oh,
Kirk Ferentz is a good enough guy, good enough coach that he's not just going to pull a scholarship. He's not going to pull a Saban, pull a scholarship and say, hey, get lost, find a new school kind of thing.
Especially after 5 years.
Right. Yeah, he's going to honor that. But I get where you're coming from, Seth, because Yeah, they definitely have not lived up to the bill.
On that point too, I mean, think about their leadership. I mean, every time you see an Iowa video, it's always one of those Paulsons talking so highly about their teammates and how positive they are too. That's got to play a big factor into why they're still around too. You know, they got to be great teammates and good people as well.
But it also makes you wonder, it's if these guys are getting the starting nod, is that like a, I don't want to say nepotism.
A
That's not the right
recruiting
word.
poll?
No, not necessarily recruiting. I'm talking like, is that like because they are leaders in the program, they get that first shot to go out there and see what they can do, and then they get yanked? Because I think, Landon Paulson in particular has shown, he just doesn't have what it takes to get it done this year. So, he's one I don't think should be in there every game. I think we might as well see one of those younger guys like the Justin Britts, the shooters, get that starting nod over him and start getting those guys experience for the future.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you have to start looking at the next year's team, and I don't think Kirk is anywhere close to starting to get ready for his retirement. You know what I mean? He's still.
No.
I mean, he's going to do it. My guess is that he's got another 10 years in him. I think he's going to be a Joe Paterno.
10 years, really?
I'd say maybe 5, and that's a
Ooh.
maybe.
Ooh, we could do a bet on that if you guys
Uh-huh.
want side
That's
side
interesting.
bets.
Side bet?
I'm in on that.
But I bet he goes for at least until 2029.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Rob, if he does not go up to 2029, you and Ange got to name your first son Dylan.
Oh my god,
And then-
dude! I could never
And then if
make that bet.
and then if he
Not
goes,
no offense to
if
your
he-
name.
if he goes less than 2029, then wait. No, if he goes longer than 2029, then I will name my first son Rob.
Wow.
Whoa, that's an enticing bet.
But that's oddly specific, though, that it has to be 9 years or more for this bet.
Think on it. Think on it.
Okay.
We'll discuss next week.
let's just put the stakes at an all-time high.
I like it.
Just
I
just
like
start way up. No,
but looking into our next mailbag segment, it actually comes from Darren. Darren, I believe, is currently a resident of, or he's from Shoeyville, Iowa, I want to say.
Shoeyville,
Cedar
shout
Rapids
out.
area. So he wants to know, guys, why is Iowa a 3-point favorite? And obviously getting in a little bit to our, not mailbag segment, but getting into our Minnesota preview.
Yeah,
I guess, Rob, tell me your initial thoughts. What do you think?
I really think that Iowa is a 3-point favorite. Only reason why is because we're at home, and I don't even think. I mean, that's kind of. I feel like they're being generous.
And even then, Rob, like typically in college football, when they do like the quote unquote the pick'em games,
Yeah,
you're going to see that -3 is going to the home team. So essentially, what this tells me is Vegas thinks this is a pick'em game
Even.
as of right now, which honestly, I don't get it. After Minnesota came out and showed out versus Penn State last week, and our inability to do anything on that Penn State defense, and Minnesota made them look like trash. I don't get it. I definitely think Minnesota should be favored in this game.
I like Rob's thought, though. Like, to be honest, you've seen what we've done against top 10 teams the last few years at Kinnick. I mean, why not think that Iowa's going to go ahead and win this game? It's going to be a blackout game. I'm not sure if they're going to have special jerseys or not, but a late afternoon game, blackout in Kinnick is going to be wild and loud, and that crowd's going to be a factor.
Oh, and I'm with you there. Like, no doubt Iowa keeps this game close, especially because it is at Kinnick.
Yeah.
However, like you brought up the last couple of years, which I think is totally reasonable, but looking at, the last, say, 2 years, we had Penn State, top 10 team coming into Kinnick. We lose, but we lose close. And we've done that these past 2 years. So, I mean, just from like an odds making point of view, thought process, you put Iowa as a favorite at -3. So anybody that essentially bets for Minnesota can still lose this game as long as they don't lose by 3 and they win said bet.
Right.
So that just doesn't make sense to me. I think you got to put this game at a pick 'em if you're trying to make money.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, here's the deal too, and you brought up Minnesota against Penn State last week. Penn State went to Minnesota and lost by what was it? More than 7 points,
Right.
whatever it was.
Mhm.
So I feel like with the home field advantage here, I feel like Iowa may win by even more than 3. But we can get into that prediction a little
Ooh,
later on.
interesting thought. I disagree, and we will get into this.
we definitely will, guys, because we're going to go straight to what it looks like. This game is going to be at 3:00 in the afternoon, blackout. for those who are going. Iowa 6-3, 3-3 in conference versus Minnesota 9-0, 6-0 in conference. Minnesota is a team right now in the Big Ten West that controls their own destiny, but they have a hell of a schedule coming up. So they got Iowa at home, which is going to be a tough game. They do have to play Northwestern, and then they play.
They go to Madison.
Madison to play Wisconsin. Yep. So there is an outside chance, and I'm talking just a bit outside, that Iowa could end up being Big Ten West champs if they beat Minnesota, and then Minnesota beats Wisconsin.
Even then, though, Iowa would have three. Yeah, but Iowa would have 3 Big Ten losses. So Minnesota would essentially need to lose 2 more times still. So okay, I see what you're saying. So they lose to Wisconsin and lose to Iowa.
Yep.
And they need to lose to Northwestern.
But then Wisconsin, how many Big Ten losses do they have?
Wisconsin has 2.
Minnesota would basically need to lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
We would need to win out, and then but Minnesota would have to beat Wisconsin.
Right. That's what
it gets a little bit hairy at the end there, but there is still a chance that in an otherworldly type of situation. Right. But obviously,
there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. God dang.
That's true. But obviously, for all intents and purposes, guys, it's pretty much going to be just we're all playing to see what it looks like for next year. So we want to look at Minnesota is now number 7 in the nation. 9-0 after an impressive win against Penn State. And guys, I watched a little bit of that game. We have some friends that are Minnesota fans. They actually have family that's coming down to tailgate this Saturday.
Nice.
Which will be fun to hang out with them. And
they're not allowed at my tailgate.
I wouldn't bring them there.
Just kidding. They can come, I guess.
But yeah, I mean, they are. This is that year for Minnesota that who's a Minnesota fan is gonna look back and be like, oh man, but our 2019 team, remember that? Blah 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 blah.
Is it kind of like the Iowa 2015 team?
Yes,
That's
what it is for them.
Me too. I think so too. But dude, you talk about that Penn State Minnesota game. How good was Tanner Morgan, their quarterback, and then their receiving core? I thought their offense looked fucking good.
Yeah, I was going to say that receiving core is outrageous.
Yeah, dude.
So the cornerbacks this weekend, especially with Michael Ojimidi a little bit hobbled last weekend, they're going to have their hands full.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of the receiving core, guys, let's get into some playmakers on the Minnesota side of the ball. Obviously, you mentioned their quarterback, Tanner Morgan. Give me 1 second here. He's obviously been playing really well.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly,
showed out, and his biggest knock was it sounds like he hadn't really beaten anybody. Well, then Penn State comes into Minnesota and they took him down, and they took him down handily. So
and here's a crazy stat too. He's 13-2 as a starter at Minnesota in his career. Isn't that crazy? 13-2 doesn't seem right.
I'll tell you what, guys, this team to me looks like after battling some close games earlier in the season, which I saw them playing some close games against some unranked teams, and I was just like, okay, yep, that looks like Minnesota to me. Just in a weird ass game, you know what I mean? But they've really turned it around.
Mm-hmm.
Row the boat seems to be a real thing.
Yeah, PJ Fleck's a dude. I hate that.
But
I hate that stupid row the boat.
Tanner Morgan, 67% completion percentage on the season. He's thrown for 2,100 yards, 21 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions.
Dude, that is nuts. Compared to Nate Stanley, I think Nate Stanley has more passing yards, but way less touchdown passes. I think, what does he have, 10 or 11? Stanley has 10 and 5 picks.
I can look that up.
I think he does. So that stat alone, he's got 9 or 10 more touchdowns. Unbelievable.
Yes, so Nate Stanley, let's see here. He's got just barely more yards, 83 more yards passing than Tanner Morgan, but he's thrown for 12 touchdowns and 5 interceptions.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
So
unbelievable. Especially when we talk about how close those first 4 games for Minnesota were against bad teams. It's how the hell has this guy got 21 touchdown passes this year?
And Tanner Morgan's a sophomore.
Yeah.
So they got a good quarterback under center. Their O-line seems to be able to give him enough time to be able to throw, especially against a team like Penn State, which we can get into.
And one crazy stat too, boys. I don't know if you guys heard this during the Penn State game. Minnesota's line average, now this is an average, 6'5", 340. And they showed a comparison to the NFL. NFL compared to Minnesota's line, the average for the NFL is 6'5", 315.
Wow.
So they have some big dudes up front. Big.
I mean,
If nothing else.
are these guys just?
They're fatties.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are they just fat? Or?
I don't think they're very athletic. I think most of their athletic guys are wrestling up there.
Yeah.
But I think they are some big dudes.
Yeah.
Think about that though.
Yeah.
6'5",
No, that's nuts.
340. Like that is huge.
Yeah, that's just stupid.
That is
You
pretty
wouldn't-
big.
You wouldn't think those boys would be able to move
No.
whatsoever.
Well, if not just get in their way, it
Mhm.
seems. But regardless, guys, what we're looking at is a team that is 9-0, and they actually run a pretty balanced attack. And it looks like Rodney Smith is their lead running back. He's got 172 attempts for 940 yards. And they've ran the ball as a team for 1,700 yards this season. They pass the ball slightly more, but their leading receiver is Rashad Bateman, but it looks like Tanner Morgan spreads the ball around pretty well. So they got Rashad Bateman leads the team in yards at 847. He's got 7 touchdowns. They also have Tyler Johnson, who's their main target. I would say he's their number one. 50 receptions, 730 yards, 8 touchdowns in the season.
And you guys remember last year, Tyler Johnson was the guy that we really wanted to key on because we thought he was probably their best receiver last year.
Mhm.
Yep. Well, he's certainly showing it this year as the standout number one. It looks like I would say that Rashad Bateman is probably their deep threat. He averages 22.3 yards per reception. And then they also have another guy who plays in the slot, Chris Ottman-Bell, who's also got about 20 receptions, and he scored 5 touchdowns. So a decent offense that's able to put up points and they've played in big games. So they have big game experience, because you kind of look at their schedule that Minnesota's played so far, and it's kind of lackluster. It's really backloaded as far as the talent goes. And I can run through that too for you guys. But before we do, let's get into a little bit of what do you think Iowa needs to do in order to stop this Minnesota offense? And I can throw it to you, Dylan. What do you think?
Yeah, I think first things first, we got to stop this passing attack. Yeah, our secondary is going to have to be there ready to play. I think this is a typical week where we bust out the cash. So Dane Belton's going to need to be ready to go. That true freshman. Obviously, they got a running attack as well, so we got to be prepared on both fronts. But I think these big, studly athletic receivers that Minnesota has, they can potentially torch Iowa if we're not ready to go. So that's my big thing that we got to stop.
You know, I agree with the pass. One thing that I do think too, and I think Rob really alluded to it too, is their running game is actually a lot better than we thought that it would be. So we got to watch out for their run game and make sure we're a stop run first before pass, or else we're going to lose ourselves like we did against Wisconsin.
Yeah, and second thought too,
Yeah.
and I take this directly from the Wisconsin game, but Iowa has to cash in on their opportunities. So specifically, Tanner Morgan, obviously we talk about his stats, 21-4. Dude doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Now coming into Kinnick, I think there's a good chance with this being a big game for him, and essentially a potential to. Can they clinch the Big Ten West? Does Wisconsin have 2?
No, Wisconsin
Okay.
only has 2 losses.
So it's not a potential clinching game, but nonetheless, probably one of the bigger games in his young career. So I think he's gonna make some mistakes here in this game. So can Iowa sit there and capitalize on said mistakes? And I'm not talking about kick a 45-yard field goal when we get a pick. No, I mean we need to get in the end zone.
And I liked how you said it earlier too. Iowa needs to speed up the ball. I mean, on offense, I love how when we sped it up, we were throwing the ball all over the place.
Right.
Minnesota has pretty good safeties. Their corners are a little undersized and they're not as good. So that's one thing that we got to really take advantage of too,
Mhm.
especially the speed and the quickness of how we can move that.
And that
offense.
was something when Penn State came into Kinnick, you saw a little bit more of that up-tempo offense. I didn't see that myself watching that game when they came into Minnesota. So I don't know if they just got things going a little bit too late, because obviously Minnesota was firing on all cylinders early in that game.
And
But
maybe it was game preparation too.
right, yeah, you never know. So I'm totally with you. I think you come out with an up-tempo offense, and essentially the way I think about it, like you look at how Iowa played Wisconsin, and I don't want to say they played not to lose, because I don't think that's it, but I think they came in with the game plan that, hey, this is going to be a rough and rowdy Big Ten game, and it's going to be low scoring, blah, blah, blah. And, you have Jonathan Taylor come out and rush for 250 yards. Obviously, that wasn't all in one play, but he had several big plays that put them in scoring position. So
several big plays at big moments, like
Right.
on third downs, like second and longs, like where we looked like we had them on their heels. I really thought the only times that we like had an edge any ways, like momentum wise, is when we had those turnovers. But I mean, they really killed it, especially like a couple of times at Quintez Cephas on that one drive, like caught a few down the sideline, and then he ultimately scored the touchdown. I mean, to put him up 21-6. I mean, at that point, you're just like, okay, this is not just a rough and rowdy Big Ten game anymore.
Right, exactly. And and you come in looking at this game, what does Iowa have to lose? The potential where if we come in and lose this game and Nate Stanley throws 6 interceptions because he's being a little bit more aggressive than normal. Okay,
I'd be good with that.
Yeah, so we have the potential to go 8-4. Well, we're still not going to the Big Ten championship. Who gives a shit? You know what I mean?
Right.
So we have nothing to lose. So I'd love to see an offense that comes out like they did versus Ohio State a few years back. You brought that game up where it's just nonstop attack. It's that same mentality. Okay, we have nothing to lose. Let's go. Let's see what we got.
And on that too, I just want Iowa to go out there and just pour it on too, not just do the Kirk Ferentz, hey, we're up by 10 points, let's just ease the brakes. No, I want Brian just to say, hey,
no, let's waste the clock.
Get the dogs out there, run them, let's get going.
Nope, we got to waste the clock.
No,
we got to make sure we hold on to the lead.
So I think that the offensive strategy here, well, even the game strategy, I love that. But I think our game strategy is going to be, I'd like to see. Let me tell you what I'd like to see, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what I think is actually going to happen. I'd like to see him come out with a 2-minute offense type situation, first drive down the field. I'd like to see Kirk Ferentz just take a 16 or 24-ounce tall boy of beer
and
speaking of,
and just crack one
and pour it over his head like stone cold.
right in front of the team before in the tunnel.
Right on the 50-yard line. Right after the captains, right after we hear we're getting the ball, Kirk Ferentz just hops into the ref's mic. We're getting the fucking ball. Let's go.
But no, take the
316, baby. Woo! Wait, that's Ric Flair. My bad. Go ahead.
No, 316. That's Austin. That's Stone Cold Steve Austin.
He doesn't say woo.
Yeah, but I did the woo.
Oh, Ric Flair. Yeah,
Ric
you're
Flair.
a big woo guy.
Ric Flair drip go woo.
Anyways, no, what I'd like to see is them go down a 2-minute drill, run down the field, score a touchdown right off the bat. Because if you're the opponent coming into a blackout game at Kinnick, we all know what happened last blackout game. Not going to jinx it or anything. But, I mean, and you're already down a score. Like, I know this Minnesota team's resilient, but I think that's going to really put this quarterback to the test. And I think that would set us up for success, obviously. But what I really think is actually going to happen, I think what we're going to do is play it safe and play conservative all through the first half. We're just going to try to we're going to try to get cued on second and third down and throw it to the flats and throw a screen that doesn't work. I think that Nate Stanley's not going to remember how to throw the ball out of bounds when he's being chased out of the pocket. And I also think I feel like you guys are glaring at me.
I love it. I love it. Keep going.
And then I think we're also like randomly in the middle of, because then we'll hit halftime and then we'll have a stern talking to. And then we're going to start off the third quarter the exact same way the entire game's been going. And then somewhere in the third quarter, we're going to snap out of it. Like we woke up from a dream and we're just like, oh, shit, we got to play. There's not much time left. We got to win. And then that's when we're going to start throwing the ball down the field and hopefully we see some success.
So basically,
sounds very similar to what I saw in Madison.
That's exactly what I was going to say too. The exact same thing.
But isn't that like just the classic recipe of like a Iowa game?
Yeah, it is. It is. And
I haven't seen a lot where you just run down and run it down their throats unless your name is the Rutgers.
And you bring up an interesting point there, Rob, that I've been hearing a lot. So it's a pretty common argument on pretty much any message boards you see right now regarding Hawkeye football, this idea of Ferentz fatigue. So you got some people on one side of the fence that are wondering, hey, are we so spoiled that we think considered bad? And then you got people on the other side of the fence that are like 15-0 national championship. Any reason Iowa can't do it? Excuse. Don't want to hear it. Fire Kirk. Fire Brian. Fire Barta. Fire everyone.
I'd be okay. I don't like Barta as much as I like Kirk Ferentz.
I don't either.
Only because of like all that Gary Dolphin BS. But that's another story for another time. But I'll tell you what. I'm not. I would say I lean that way, but I'm not that far in that camp. I think because I mean, if you get rid of our head coach first off, the longest tenured head coach in football, and I think it shows in the way that he schemes the team. We're a little bit old school in the way that we try to play, but I mean, it's still fairly successful.
Mhm.
Not as successful as it used to be. And if this is a bell curve, I'm hoping that it's not, so we don't continue our decline. I think we should. I mean, we've been maintaining a decent record for a long time for the majority of his career. But I'll tell you what, guys, like I also don't think that he's getting the job done. And you ranted about this last episode, if you remember.
Oh, absolutely. And so, you know, I go back and forth with this quite a bit because, you know, I seen a statistic the other day where, you know, right now there's like 5 or 6 college football teams that have won 8 games in each in the last 5 years. And it's Alabama, Clemson. Oh God, who else? Georgia, I think, was one. And then it was like a random one, like Appalachian State, I want to say.
Or
That makes
US,
sense.
UFC,
And then Iowa. And which just seems insane to me. I think there was another Big Ten team in there too. Maybe it was Michigan or Ohio State.
Ohio State, probably.
Yeah. But I mean, so you're up there with some good company as far as consistency wise. And you know, one of our buddies, you know, I saw a post in his column as well, Tory Brecht, who we've talked a little bit about earlier in the season, but he talks about how, you know, the potential from going to good to great isn't near as difficult as going from bad to great. So right now you're seeing it with like Nebraska, who, you know, Bo Pelini, obviously there was other reasons surrounding it, but he had, you know, 4 or 5 straight 9-win seasons, and they're like, hey, we're Nebraska, we win national titles. You know, and again, Bo Pelini was a douche, so it's probably a bad example. But you look at that, and look how far that set them back, because then they get that Mike Riley, who came in and tried to install a West Coast offense into a, you know, at the end of a Big 12 team, and then coming into the Big 10. Or no, Mike Riley was all Big 10. That's
Big
right.
10.
No, Bo Pelini was the one that did the transition. That's right. So, I mean, and obviously, you know, that set him back quite a few years. I think, you know, they potentially got the right guy in the job now to turn that around eventually. But, you know, you're looking at 2 potential 4-win seasons for, you know, a program that's generally known in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s for being in the national title conversation every year. So that's, you know, that's where I kind of want to pump the brakes on the, you know, the fire Brian, fire Kirk, fire everyone crowd, because that's not what you do. Because I think slipping back into that is a hell of a lot easier than maintaining the consistency we're at right now.
Yeah, but what are your thoughts on that?
That being said, there's absolutely no reason that we cannot expect more as Iowa fans as well. Yeah. All the excuses you hear about where we're located, it's all bullshit.
I like that take. Actually, I really, really like it. I do, Dill. You did good. One thing I will say, though, is I think we have our defense in place. I think we consistently have a great defense. I think the biggest issue that we have as far as coaching goes, and I do believe it's gotten a lot better, is just recruiting offensive talent. Because if you think a kid from Florida is going to want to come to Iowa, play in the cold Midwest, and play for a team that, you know, heavily relies on the run game, you're crazy. Like we got lucky, and I'm saying this for real. I think we got lucky with Brandon Smith coming from Mississippi all the way up here to play.
Ooh, see, I disagree. I think that was an absolute coaching steal.
You think so?
Yeah, that was a steal.
I think it's a player steal more than a coaching steal.
Well, my point was being the coach went down because I forget the exact story who his recruiter was. I want to say it was our recruiting coordinator. I want to say it was Kelvin Bell that coached or recruited him.
Okay.
But anyway, so where he's originally from, he's from down in that area and was just talking to buddies and whatnot. And they say, hey, you got to come check out this kid. And so goes and starts checking out Brandon Smith, pretty much a no name at that point. You know, it turns out this kid ends up winning the state high jump. So just an overall freak athlete. And you know, he calls up Kirk Ferentz. Kirk Ferentz trusts him enough, pretty much offer him on the spot. Mm-hmm. And so he comes and visits and does all that. So I don't think they definitely did their work. And then, you know, Ole Miss and Mississippi State start swimming around at the last minute. Obviously, his home state schools, and he still picks Iowa over them, 2 SEC schools.
And that's where I'm getting at. That's where I'm getting at. It's gotten a lot better. But I say up until this point, I think not necessarily recruiting lower level candidates. I'm just saying that we just haven't had the firepower that we have on offense as what we've had on defense.
Oh, absolutely.
recruiting-wise.
But like you said, I think, if we're having this conversation 5 years ago, you have a lot to go on with that argument. However, you look at some of the guys we got, particularly in the wide receiver room right now. You got Amir Smith-Marset, who originally was committed to Minnesota, and I believe Rutgers or Maryland before that. You look at same thing. Tyrone Tracy had a shit ton of Big Ten offers coming out of in the Indianapolis area. You look at same thing with Brandon Smith. Has a couple SEC offers from the South, and you pull them from there, like you said. Because not a lot of guys down there are going to want to come play in the Iowa cold. So
all in all, my final point is I agree with you on not fire Brian and not fire Kirk yet, because I think that they are starting to go back on the rise and on the trend that we're going to start seeing more improved, better players, better play calling. I think we're going to have a great evolution. But I will say, if Kirk ever leaves the program, Bobby Stoops is next coach calling it.
Absolutely not. That is so wrong. No, he is done. No,
Bobby Stoops.
We've had this conversation how many times? Absolutely not.
Yes.
There's no way
he's in the coaching tree.
Yeah, there is no way he is in the Hayden Fry coaching tree, but there is no way he ever comes back to the University of Iowa to coach. No, his boys playing in Norman right now.
Okay.
So, and he's got more kids that are going to go through college, potentially play college sports and all that. Right now, he's working in the XFL.
I know he is.
So he gets to work 4 months a year compared to a 12-month, 365-day-a-year job coaching an NCAA football team. Not a chance in hell. He ain't coming back.
I bet money. Here's the reason why. I'm pretty sure his wife is from Cresco, from Iowa. Mm-hmm. He was part of Hayden Fry's staff, and I know for a fact he's always wanted to come back to Iowa and be the head coach and the successor of Kirk.
Well, no doubt he loves Iowa. To say he wanted to be the successor of Kirk Ferentz, I totally disagree.
Dude, could you imagine? Here, let me just throw this at you. Could you imagine what firepower he put on offense as a Big Ten offensive coordinator and head coach at Iowa? I think he'd be unbelievable.
Well, you look back to the Oklahoma teams that he coached.
Some pretty fucking good teams.
Yeah, they had some firepower, but there was a reason he got shown the door for Lincoln. What's his nuts? Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. Well, who was his successor, right? He was his offensive coordinator.
Absolutely, but
and then he left.
Yeah, no, they showed Bob the door. I think he quietly resigned, but
and then
he might as well have been fired.
Successor.
Well,
he ain't coming to Iowa.
Regardless of what happened to Bob Stoops, I wanted to let it go because I like the banter and I want to hear about like the future of the Hawks and what it takes to get back to a championship level team like we were. But guys, it all starts this Saturday. It starts with what are we going to put on the field against a really hot Minnesota team, and kickoff is at 3 p.m. like I said on Fox. Minnesota hasn't won in Iowa for 20 years, which is an interesting fact. And guys, getting into the depth chart, looking at this game, and knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
Oh, gotcha.
Thank you, Dill. They haven't won in Kinnick, and I think that we have a very tough place to play for other teams. But back to the depth chart, Christian Welch practiced this week, no contact.
Yep, so he was practicing with the ones this week, typically no contact drills, so I think there's a good chance we see him Saturday.
I bet it's going to be in a rotation, though, between him, Dylan Doyle, and Jack Campbell.
Oh, yeah.
And Dylan Doyle's really proven himself in the linebacking core, and I liked him being able to get after it back there.
I liked him until he tried to tackle Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. I mean, not that anybody on our defense had success doing that this past weekend, but ran aside. I think he'll be a good player in the future. I was just really disappointed in our linebacking crew this weekend.
I mean, it's freshman though.
Yeah. I just think about it like Mark McGuire when he was testifying to the grand jury. He's not here to talk about the past. Go on, Rob.
No, I mean, only playing time and development and his dad in the weight room. Like, okay. I think he's gonna be good. I think
he will.
Yeah. I'd like to see how he ends up. I got high hopes for you, Dylan. Dylan Doyle. Brandon Smith participated in some of the practices this week. He's not expected to play. He dressed for the last game, you said?
So he dressed for the last practice.
Practice, okay.
I was going to say everything we hear coming out of practice right now is, just like doing sprints and that sort of thing. So he's starting to get back there. I wouldn't expect to see him back to full strength for a few more weeks yet. And they're keeping that injury pretty on the wraps. I don't think we ever heard officially what it is.
I know I didn't hear. I
Yeah,
tried to
I
look it
didn't.
up after the game, and there was
Right. They're just like, yeah, it's a
mum's the word.
yeah, it was at first it was a contusion. Then it's a little bit more.
Now, tell us
All of a
what's
sudden he's
going
gone
on.
5 weeks.
Oh, I know. Yeah, exactly. And he's going to be our number one target and a huge red zone threat. And I think that we're definitely missing him. Now, there's been guys that have been stepping up that I'm really excited about, aka Tyrone Tracy. But guys, it all starts in the offensive line. What's going on with Tyler Linderbaum?
So another good question that Kirk's totally keeping under wraps as well. But everything we're hearing out of camp is he has not practiced all week. So that's got to be pretty concerning. He's been one of the bright spots, especially as a true freshman on that offensive line. But it was also apparent that he came out of the game with Wisconsin, and we didn't hear a whole hell of a lot about it. So I feel like they're keeping that one close to the chest. He hasn't practiced all week whatsoever. So, in with the trainers, interesting to see.
So if that happens, I know, Dylan, you and I were kind of talking back and forth here. We obviously have the Paulsons. We have Justin Britt. We have Kallenberger, and then also Kyler Schott. Who do we see at center, do you think? And I'm sure we're probably going to see a lot of rotation at guard.
Yeah, so I know Schott's had a little bit of experience at center as far as like camp and that sort of thing goes. Justin Britt is another one that has some experience at the center position. So, I would look to see those two. As far as the guards go, you're going to see some sort of rotation between Kallenberger, if he's playing, Kallenberger, Shooter, and Landon Paulson, like it or not. Sorry, Seth.
Yep. There's going to be a rotation there. I'm looking to see that hopefully change with the way that they play. I want to see like some different looks in there. I mean, want to see like if we can find a good, center five.
Right. And so the Kirk Ferentz mentality when it's come to the offensive line has always been to put the 5 best players out there.
And just find a position for him.
Exactly. If this is our 5 best, we're in trouble. So I don't believe that's our 5 best. I think we're going by position. I think you got to go back to just throwing those guys out there. And if you are going to run the zone blocking scheme, especially running the ball, throw the 5 guys out there, let them figure it out. It might take a quarter or two, but let's go. Let them do it.
Perfect. And guys, getting into the kicking game as far as depth chart news goes, Caleb Shudak.
Yep, Caleb Shudak. So you guys remember him, number 10. He does all of our kickoffs. He officially entered the transfer portal this week. And so he's a walk-on. He's not a scholarship guy anyways. But nonetheless, when we've seen people enter the transfer portal in the past, they've either left the team or they stay with the team and don't play. So that'll be interesting to see if anybody does take over those kickoff duties or what all is going on there. But yeah, I'm really curious.
We really haven't seen Keith Duncan kick off at all either. And I thought Shudak has actually done a pretty good job at kicking off this year too. Yeah. So I'm very curious what's going to happen this week or what we'll see.
I think that it's my opinion that he is probably somebody that wants to be a field goal kicker. Mm-hmm. He wants to be a place kicker, and just kicking off is not cutting the mustard for him. So
right, and that's understandable with him too, because I think he's coming into his senior year, so he has the opportunity to do like a grad transfer. So understand
exactly. He could be the next Sleep Dalton for anybody out there.
Right.
So it's probably a good move for him. Not really going to affect us a whole lot. And also in special teams, Max Cooper is going to be returning punts again this week, which I liked the spark that he gave us a little bit.
Yeah, and
seemed to have some moves.
At the beginning of the year, Amir Smith-Marset was promising us a kick return,
which he has not.
Which he has not done yet.
Has not come through on his promise in Big Ten Media Day.
But I do like the fact what you brought up too, that he is doing a lot of the kick return because he is shifty. He kind of reminds me of Kyle Gronowik from last year too. He's got breakaway speed and he's shifty.
Perfect. We already talked about how we're going to beat Minnesota, what things that we need to do. I think the only thing left is predictions.
That's right. Yeah.
So, guys, ESPN has Iowa at a 60% favorite. The over-under for this game is 44.5 total points scored. And then according to OddsShark and most of the odds that we could find out there, we already mentioned Iowa is a 3-point favorite. They got Minnesota +3 in this matchup. And so kind of seems like it's going to be – they're calling it to be a close game. Like Dylan said earlier, it looks to be a pick 'em. I want to toss it over to Bo. What do you think that this game is going to end up being like.
Yeah,
As far as the prediction goes.
I think it's going to be one of those where I think Iowa's going to come out of the gate shooting real quick. I think we're going to score some quick points, and it's going to be kind of one of those that we're not going to look back after getting up on a lead. I think Minnesota's going to make a late break at it, but I think that we're going to have a pretty good defensive game plan that we're going to be able to shut down the receivers. I got Iowa winning 27-23. Feel pretty confident. I've been going to work every day this week thinking that Iowa is going to go ahead and take this game, and I feel really good about my 27-23 pick. Dill, I'll pass to you here.
Bo, appreciate it, sir. Hey, and so I just wanted to go ahead and remind everybody as far as last week's predictions go, the final score was 24-22, and my prediction was Wisconsin would win that game 23-16. So I think it's safe to say mine was the closest to being accurate. So therefore, you guys should all take account into my pick coming up here.
Okay.
Dylan is on a hot streak, is what he's trying to say.
That's right. So, guys, I feel similar to you, Bo. I definitely think Iowa comes out shooting in this game. I really do. I think the offense finally clicks like we've been so desperately searching for here these past 9 games. So I think this offense finally clicks. However, I don't see it being as big of a blowout as you think, though, either. I think, Minnesota's defense is going to play tough, and their offense is going to come out shooting early as well. I think Iowa barely pulls ahead in this one, 23, Minnesota 21. And so take Minnesota with the spread. Take Minnesota +3. I believe they going to cover.
I'll tell you what.
Iowa's going to win.
I sadly am going to have to disagree with you guys. I do think that this Minnesota team is one of the team for their going down in their decades. And so I think that this is one of their best teams that they're going to be able to put together. And I think that they come into Kinnick and they get a win. So
Wow.
I would pick Minnesota to win, cover the spread, and I think the total is going to go over. My final prediction is going to be 31-21 Minnesota.
Wow.
And listen here, listeners, like, obviously, we're all 3 Hawkeye homers here, and I can just see in Rob's face how much that kills him.
Sucks.
Honestly, it's a good pick. It really is. The fact that Iowa somehow favored 3 points in this game really makes no sense to me, especially with the way Minnesota's playing so far this year. So
I'm a diehard, guys.
I totally see where you're coming from with that pick.
But I'll
So
tell you
feel
what, I still need to go down to Riverside Casino to set up my Elite Sportsbook profile so that I can place bets. But
nice.
I'd be hard pressed to bet against Minnesota this game. I mean, just coming off of a big win. Now they're going into a tough place to play, and I think that's a lot of that is factored in. But I think what a lot of people are looking at as far as this game goes is Iowa's history and how they play at home. But I mean, I have not been impressed with their team so far this year. The team that they have a lot of potential to be good.
Mhm.
They really haven't done a lot with that potential. On the flip side, Minnesota's just gone balls to the wall with everything they got, and they
Right.
seem to be able to utilize their best strengths, like their receivers. Like
Yep.
we are not able to.
See,
In
I
a
like
weird
that.
way.
I like that though, but at the same time, the one signature win they have is against Penn State at home.
Right.
Which-
I wanted to talk about that.
Which again, I mean, Iowa played Penn State at home and didn't play obviously as well as what Minnesota did there. But to be honest with you, I think Penn State was down that game. Didn't look that good. I still don't know how legit this team is.
Well, I don't know how good Penn State is.
Right.
I mean, to
Yeah.
be honest with you guys. But speaking of Minnesota, just because we're talking about Minnesota, I
Yeah.
mentioned this earlier. I want to get back to it. Just for you degenerates out there, you look at Minnesota right now on paper, and it's just 9-0, 6-0 in conference, number 7 or 8 ranked overall.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? This is their schedule. Win against South Dakota State, 28-21. They beat Fresno State 38-35 in double overtime.
Yeah.
At Fresno State, okay? Then they beat Georgia Southern 35-32, barely. Then
Second field goal.
Then they beat Purdue at Purdue 38-31, a game that we barely beat Purdue too, but Purdue is not very good at all. Then they beat Illinois in the beginning of October, and I think this is prior to Illinois getting their hot start and like coming back against all these teams and beating Wisconsin, but they beat them 40-17, which is pretty handily. They beat Nebraska 34-7. They went to Rutgers, won 42-7. Then they played Maryland, beat them 52-10. So that was their schedule leading up to Penn State. Like not a single top 50
Right.
competitor in sight. Then they play number 4 Penn State. Obviously, last week they beat them. Then they have us, Northwestern, and then 14th ranked Wisconsin to end their schedule.
And not even to contradict myself there too, they putting up some points on some teams. Like Iowa only put up 20 on Northwestern. Granted, they haven't played Northwestern yet. What was Iowa's score against Purdue? It was close, right?
Yeah, it
look it up.
was close, but it was one of those where Purdue scored like a last
right.
second touchdown.
But
Oh,
still,
that's right.
But still, they're putting up 35, 40 points on
Right.
some teams, man. That's pretty impressive. I'll give them that.
So we won
There's no question
26-20.
this will be. Yeah, there's no question this is going to be a tough outing here this weekend
For sure.
So,
Now we beat Rutgers 30-0, and they beat them 42-7. Okay, so I mean, that's a really besides Rutgers and Purdue. We have not played the same opponents this year, but needless to say, if we would have had Minnesota's schedule, I'd be hard pressed to say that we weren't 9-0 coming into this game against them, anyways.
Right.
So I don't know. It could be a pick 'em. I think I have a tendency to think that this Minnesota team, with the confidence they've built and the momentum that they have, that they have a chance to do something pretty big. I hope that that's not the case. I'm not going to be betting on the game, just to be honest, because if I bet against the Hawks and the Hawks win, this will be their biggest win of the season.
Oh,
Right.
for sure.
oh, by far.
Something kind of cool too that I hope, obviously all Iowa fans are in love with the wave at the end of the first quarter, which is phenomenal. Something that we always do, for the Children's Hospital.
Got to take part in it for the first time against Purdue.
Have you guys seen the story about the placeholder, the backup placeholder for Minnesota? The
No.
kid that's battled cancer 4 times, beat cancer 4 times, is the backup place kicker. They told him he would never ever see the football field again, and has played in 2 Big Ten games so far this year.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Awesome, great story. If
Yeah,
listeners
very
out there,
cool.
if you guys have not seen the story and you guys are looking for a time to shed some tears, please go watch that. It's awesome. It's so cool. I'd love to see him on the field.
Yeah, it's a really cool story.
Yeah.
I'm with you there.
Well, guys, we got finished with our predictions. And it turns out after last week that I am the one who is on the short end of the stick because I was the only one to pick Iowa, and I was so I'm going to have to chug at some point.
I mean, we won't make you chug for that because we're all equally disappointed there, I would say.
So I got free with a free no chug. But this
We'll
next
just
week's
make
guys,
you go in and buy beer, and you got to do it naked at the Casey's. And
we're going to be
put it
chugging.
on video.
We're going to be chugging whoever loses. And I hope it's not me. But then again, I hope it is me.
Viewers also out there, Dylan and I are going to be live from downtown Iowa City. I'm sure probably Rob will be as well. So look for Hawkeyes and Tall Boys, the Instagram page, to be uploaded with some live videos here of us at the tailgate.
Absolutely, guys. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. I know that I think we on Facebook, if you're watching us on Facebook, we actually experienced a little bit of intermittent issue, but I just refreshed the page and we were all set to go to see the full episode. So it might be split up into 2, but hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. But we're going to end this episode like we always do, except unless Bo, you got something? Dilly, you got something to
Nope.
add? Okay.
I'm just
Well,
saying.
hopefully the Hawkeyes can get a win against Minnesota this weekend. Tune in 3:00 this afternoon. It's going to be a home game, so obviously we're going to have a lot to be able to drink about, and it should be very
Cheers.
good. So
Cheers, go Hawks.
cheers and go Hawks.